Hey, what's up guys? In this video I'm going to show you how to make a variable waveform selector with built-in PWM. And a good example is the waveform selector in Diva for the triple VCO. It cycles in between and it morphs in between, for lack of a better term. So we got ramp up and then triangle and then ramp down saw and then square wave. And it's all kind of variable. You can kind of go in between. Right. And once you get to square, you have the ability to control the duty cycle of the square, or the pulse width of it. Right. So it's kind of like, saving a knob on the panel. Very clever. And this goes back to antiquity, essentially. So we're going to make the same thing in Reaktor. And I'm going to start off by deleting these. I'm just going to drop in, right click, and drop in a couple of oscillators. I'll do a sawtooth. This one's going to be pretty basic, and maybe a sine, and then let's do, well, we got to have pulse in there, or else it's not going to work. So it's going to be just 3 of these, and it's going to be sine, saw, and then square, and then PWM. So these are all nodes that have pitch control, amplitude, right? But pulse has a width selector here, and I'm going to actually give us some basic control over these. Again, this is going to be basic. So I right-clicked and dropped in a fader, which is a float value between 0 and 1. I'm going to hook these all up into the amplitude. So now I have control over the overall volume of each of them. And for ease of use, I'm going to get a MIDI in over here and plug this into the pitch. No gates, no ADSRs or anything like that. Pretty straightforward. So from here, I'm going to drop in a selector, and with the selector, we'll do signal path selector / scanner over here, and right now, there is only one input. We can actually change that. We can right-click on it and go Properties if you don't see this. And we'll do number of ports 3 because we have 3 of these friends here. So I'll just go to 3, right? Starts at 0, 1, 2, all right? And that's just how this kind of thing works, right? Things kind of start at 0. They don't start at 1. So I'll just match these all in, and these are in order of how I kind of want them to morph. You can have as many as you want, just doing sine to saw to square. All right, so from here, we need to have positional selection, right? So I'll just right-click, go to panel, and then drop in a knob. I will double-click on that, and I'll name this posts as position. And then this fader over here, I'll name this vol. Okay. And, this will be our basic setup here. And then this position will be hooked up into here. So this knob up here controls the position of it. So let's do a quick little test, right? And you'll kind of understand how this works now. All right, so right now it's defaulted to a very low key. So right now it is a sine wave. I'm moving the position, and it's only going to from sine to saw, right? Because the position range on this knob needs to go, up to 3. It'll make sense in a moment. So from, this position value, which the value is being read out right here, from 0 to 1, it'll morph to sine to saw, and then position 2. From 1 to 2, we'll go from saw to square. So let's just test that out here. We can right-click Properties if you don't see it. Maximum value, we'll go 2. Okay. All right, so let's give this another try. Very nice. So that works. But now we are going to implement the functionality that when you get to the square wave, it'll switch to kind of a new mode and adjust the pulse width here. I'll just give you an example of what that kind of does. No, not a fader. Right. And, you know, when you're manufacturing a synth or something, you know, you don't want too many things on the panel because that runs down, you know, the cost. And yeah, this will be, you know, PWM. Okay. So yeah, let's, you know, set this to square. Damn it. There you go. Set this to square. Right, now we have control over the pulse width, but it just does a weird thing when we go back into our regular position. Right, it doesn't make sense contextually. Having this controlled all by one knob is fantastic. So we need to select the range so that it is 3. So it'll output beyond 2 for this, you know, magical thing that's going to happen beyond it, right? And from 2 to 3, that will adjust the pulse width. All right, I'll give you an example what that does now. Doesn't do anything because we actually need to just set up some basic math. And don't be afraid because I'm not that great at math, but I kind of tend to wrestle with things as I go. So we need to drop in something called a comparator. So I'll right click and then go to math. And we'll just do, yeah, drop in a comparator. So we want the value from the knob position to go into A. And we want to spit out a true, right, if it goes beyond 2, right? Because once it goes beyond 2, we want it to be like, hey, you know, start doing stuff to the pulse width of the square, and only when it goes beyond 2. Right? So for that, we're going to drop in a math function, which is a constant, right? So we'll just type in 2 there, and then drop that into B. So when this value goes beyond 2, this will spit out a result. And we can actually do that by debugging, right? This is something called an event watcher, and I'll just drop this out into the green here. And you'll notice that, yeah, 0, 0, 0, right? All these values that we're doing, all these changes, it's all zeros because it's not beyond 2. Once it goes beyond 2, we'll start seeing ones. There you go. Now it's 1, now 0. 1, 0. True, false, Boolean. Okay, cool. Let's move on. So once it gets beyond that, we want something else to happen. We want to tell something to take control and, you know, do something and only something when we get beyond 2, right? So we're going to do that with something called a router, which is in event processing, right? So we want router 1, 2, all right? So the control is what's going to receive the, you know, the true statement. So when this sees true, it will actually allow things to be output. Think of it as like a gate. And, you know, when a gate always has something being fed into it, which will be this position, right? But then as soon as this says 1 or true, it will allow things to be spat out. And I'll demonstrate that by going back into debug. And yeah, we'll look at this here, right? 0, 0, 0. Oh, yeah, and now we have a value. Oh, no more values. And now we have more values going on, right? Between 2 and 3. Problem is that this PWM only accepts a value between 0 and 1 as per its control. So from here, it's just basic math. Just subtract 2, right? I'll give you an example of that. My brain farted. We'll go to math and we'll just do subtract, and then we'll just copy this constant, duplicate, All right, so yeah, take this value when it gets spat out and then subtract 2. And then we'll add in another debugger. Right, and this just reads value whenever there's a change. And now the value is between 0 and 1. Okay, so from here, we can essentially just drop this into the width of the pulse. And yeah, let's give it a listen. Right, and it goes to silence, but I like pulse width modulation that goes to silence. And yeah, that is basically it right there. And yeah, pretty fun and simple. And it's it's one of those things you can have as many as you want here. And the selector makes it very smooth. You can play around with the curve types. Linear seems quite a bit appropriate. But yeah, that is a variable oscillator with PWM. Hope you guys enjoyed that video. Hope you learned stuff. Take care and have a good one.